The rain hammered against the windows of General Hospital like a warning from the heavens themselves. Inside the operating wing, the fluorescent lights buzzed coldly over the chaos unfolding in real time. Nurses rushed between rooms, monitors beeped, security guards whispered urgently into radios. And at the center of it all lay Dr. Isaiah Gannon, unconscious, bleeding, and terrifyingly close to losing everything. What began as a furious confrontation with Curtis Ashford had spiraled into a nightmare nobody in Port Charles saw coming. Now the hospital's newest and most gifted surgeon faced the possibility that he might never operate again. And if the latest spoilers are true, Curtis's violent outburst may cost Isaiah the biggest surgery of his entire life. A surgery that could have changed medicine forever. A surgery that only Isaiah could perform. But after one devastating attack, it may all be gone. The episode opens moments after the shocking altercation. Curtis, consumed by rage over the secrets Isaiah had been hiding, cornered the doctor in a restricted corridor beneath the hospital. Witnesses later described hearing shouting echo through the hallway, before a loud crash shook the basement level. When staff arrived, they found Isaiah crumpled beside a steel supply cart, blood pooling beneath his head. Curtis stood frozen nearby, his fists trembling, his expression horrified by what he'd done. "Call a trauma team," one nurse screamed. But the damage had already begun. As Isaiah was rushed upstairs, doctors quickly realized this was more than a concussion. The impact had severely injured his dominant hand and wrist, the same hand responsible for performing some of the most intricate surgical procedures in the country. For an ordinary doctor, it would have been catastrophic. For Isaiah, it could end his career. Meanwhile, Curtis was immediately detained by hospital security, though insiders say he didn't resist. In fact, spoilers reveal Curtis looked utterly broken as officers escorted him away. He kept asking if Isaiah was alive, one insider teased. Curtis realized far too late how badly he'd lost control. But what Curtis doesn't yet know is that Isaiah was only days away from attempting the most groundbreaking operation of his life, a secret experimental surgery, one that had drawn attention from major medical institutions across the country. And now, the entire project may collapse. According to leaked hospital records, Isaiah had been preparing for a revolutionary neurological reconstruction procedure involving a teenage patient suffering from irreversible spinal deterioration. Other surgeons deemed the operation impossible. Isaiah disagreed. For months, he secretly worked alongside a private research team, developing a risky but potentially life-saving technique that could restore mobility to patients previously considered hopeless cases. Only a handful of people even knew the surgery existed. That included Portia Robinson, who reportedly begged Isaiah not to move forward because of the enormous risks involved. But Isaiah refused to back down. He believed this surgery could redefine modern medicine, one spoiler source revealed. He was willing to stake his entire reputation on it. Now fate may make that decision for him. Back in the ICU, Portia struggles to maintain composure as specialists examine Isaiah's hand. The initial scans paint a devastating picture. Multiple fractures, nerve trauma, and severe ligament damage. One surgeon quietly delivers the verdict no one wanted to hear. Even if he heals, the doctor says grimly, his precision may never fully return. Portia's face collapses, because she knows exactly what that means. No surgery, no breakthrough, no miracle for the young patient waiting upstairs, and perhaps no future for Isaiah at all. Elsewhere, news of the attack spreads through Port Charles like wildfire. Jordan Ashford is absolutely stunned when she learns Curtis assaulted Isaiah. Though Curtis insists things got out of control, Jordan is furious. "You don't get to explain this away," she snaps in spoilers. "A man could lose his career because you couldn't control your temper." Curtis has no defense, because deep down he knows she's right. But the real shock comes when Isaiah regains consciousness late that evening. Weak and heavily medicated, Isaiah's first question isn't about his injuries. It's about the surgery. Can I still do it? The silence in the room tells him everything. Spoilers say Isaiah immediately tries moving his fingers, only to grimace in agony. Panic spreads across his face as he realizes his hand isn't responding normally. For a surgeon, steady hands are everything, and Isaiah can feel his slipping away. Still, despite the pain, he refuses to accept defeat. Against medical advice, Isaiah demands access to his scans and begins obsessively studying his own injuries. Nurses later overhear him muttering surgical terminology under his breath, as if desperately trying to solve the impossible equation of saving himself before it's too late. Because the clock is ticking. The patient scheduled for the groundbreaking operation is deteriorating rapidly. If the surgery doesn't happen soon, the opportunity may vanish forever, and that's where things take an even darker turn. Spoilers suggest the hospital board may use Isaiah's condition as an excuse to shut the entire experimental program down permanently. Several wealthy donors reportedly fear the operation is too controversial, especially now that its lead surgeon has become headline news following a violent incident. One board member allegedly calls the project a legal catastrophe waiting to happen. Portia is horrified. Not only is Isaiah fighting for his own future, but powerful forces are already circling to destroy the dream he sacrificed everything for. Then comes the emotional bombshell nobody expected. The teenage patient's mother arrives at the hospital and begs Isaiah not to give up. In a heartbreaking scene, she places her son's medical file beside Isaiah's bed. "You're the only doctor who gave him hope," she whispers through tears. "Please don't take that away." The moment devastates Isaiah, because for the first time he realizes this isn't just about his career anymore. Someone's life truly depends on him, and if he fails, a child may never walk again. As guilt consumes Curtis, he attempts to visit Isaiah privately, but Portia blocks him before he can enter the room. "You've done enough," she spits coldly. Curtis tries apologizing, but Portia refuses to hear it. No apology fixes this. Spoilers hint this confrontation becomes explosive, especially when Curtis learns exactly what Isaiah was preparing to do before the attack. "You didn't just hurt a man," Portia says. "You may have destroyed a medical breakthrough." Those words haunt Curtis immediately, because suddenly the consequences become far bigger than assault charges. He may have ruined the future for countless patients. Meanwhile, Trina Robinson finds herself trapped in emotional turmoil. She cares deeply about Curtis, but she's horrified by what he's done. And when she visits Isaiah, things become even more complicated. Spoilers say Isaiah tries defending Curtis, insisting the confrontation was accidental. But Trina sees through it instantly. "You're protecting him," she says softly. Isaiah doesn't answer. That silence says everything. Could Isaiah secretly blame himself for provoking Curtis? Or is he protecting Curtis because he knows prison would destroy Trina's family forever? Either way, the emotional fallout is just beginning. At the same time, whispers begin circulating that another surgeon may attempt Isaiah's operation instead. But there's a major problem. Nobody else fully understands Isaiah's technique. His research notes are incomplete. Critical portions exist only in his memory. And with his hand injured, Isaiah may be the only person capable of finishing what he started. That realization pushes him toward a shocking decision. According to insiders, Isaiah secretly begins physical therapy ahead of schedule, ignoring unbearable pain in an attempt to regain mobility before the surgery deadline. Doctors warn he could permanently worsen the damage. He doesn't care. "If I wait," Isaiah reportedly says, "that kid loses his chance." The storyline becomes even more emotional when Elizabeth Baldwin discovers Isaiah practicing surgical motions alone late at night. His injured hand shakes violently. Sweat drips down his forehead. But he keeps going. Again and again and again. Until he collapses from exhaustion. Elizabeth is shattered by what she sees. "You're destroying yourself," she tells him. But Isaiah's response leaves her speechless. "If I stop now," he whispers, "then Curtis didn't just injure me, he ended me." That line alone may become one of the season's most unforgettable moments. Because Isaiah's identity has always been tied to saving lives. Without surgery, who is he? And can he survive emotionally if the thing he loves most is taken away? Meanwhile, Curtis spirals deeper into guilt and isolation. Friends who once defended him begin distancing themselves. Even those who understand his anger can't justify the consequences. Stella Henry reportedly delivers one of the harshest truths Curtis has ever heard. "You spent years rebuilding your soul," she says. "Don't destroy it now by refusing to face what you've done." Curtis finally breaks down. Spoilers say he admits he's terrified Isaiah's life is permanently ruined because of him, and that fear only intensifies when legal consequences start mounting. Hospital administrators consider filing civil charges, medical review boards launch investigations, the press begins swarming Port Charles. Headlines describing violence inside General Hospital threaten to damage the hospital's reputation nationwide. But the biggest shock may still be coming. Late one night, Portia discovers Isaiah secretly reviewing footage of the attack. Over and over, frame by frame, obsessively. At first she assumes he's building a case against Curtis. But she's wrong. Isaiah is studying the exact moment he fell, because he believes something else caused the catastrophic damage to his hand, not Curtis. The steel cart. Spoilers hint Isaiah may have instinctively twisted his wrist trying to protect his head during the fall, creating the devastating fracture pattern now threatening his future. That revelation changes everything emotionally. Because if Isaiah blames himself, Curtis's guilt becomes even more unbearable. And yet the truth may not free either man. Instead, it traps them both in a nightmare neither knows how to escape. As surgery day approaches, Isaiah receives crushing news from specialists. His hand has healed far too slowly. The nerve response remains unstable. Performing a high-risk operation in this condition could kill the patient. The board immediately orders the surgery canceled. Isaiah is devastated. But then comes the cliffhanger twist. The teenage patient suddenly crashes. Emergency complications leave him with hours to live unless the procedure happens immediately. Chaos erupts across the hospital. Doctors argue frantically in conference rooms. Administrators panic over liability. Portia desperately searches for alternatives, and Isaiah quietly makes a decision that could change everything. He's going to perform the surgery anyway, even with an injured hand, even if it destroys his career forever, even if one mistake kills them both. Spoilers suggest the final scenes of the episode are absolutely heart-stopping. Isaiah enters the operating room wearing a compression brace beneath his surgical glove. His injured hand trembles slightly as he scrubs in. Every doctor in the gallery watches nervously. No one knows if he can actually do this. Then the doors open, and Isaiah steps inside. Outside the OR, Curtis arrives unexpectedly after learning about the emergency surgery. Through the observation window, he sees the devastating truth firsthand. Isaiah is risking everything despite the injury Curtis helped cause. The emotional weight crushes him, especially when Portia turns toward Curtis with tears in her eyes and says, "If his hand gives out in there, that boy dies." Curtis can barely breathe. Inside the operating room, tension becomes unbearable as Isaiah begins the delicate procedure. Early spoilers hint his injured hand initially performs well, shocking everyone watching. But midway through the operation, disaster strikes. A sudden tremor hits, one instrument slips, monitors begin screaming, and the episode ends with Isaiah staring in horror at the blood rapidly filling the surgical field. "Pressure's dropping," a nurse yells. Then, black screen. Fans are already exploding with theories online. Did Isaiah's injury finally betray him? Will the patient survive? And perhaps most devastating of all, has Curtis indirectly destroyed the very thing Isaiah lived for? Insiders promise the fallout from this storyline will permanently alter relationships across Port Charles. Curtis and Isaiah may never recover emotionally from what happened between them. Trina could be forced to choose sides. Portia's fury may become impossible to forgive. And if Isaiah loses his ability to operate permanently, General Hospital itself could lose one of its brightest stars. But perhaps the cruelest twist is this: Isaiah's greatest surgery was never just about medicine. It was about redemption. Hope, proving impossible things could still happen. Now that dream hangs by a thread, and one violent moment may have shattered far more than bones. Thank you for watching. Write what you think about it. Subscribe to the channel.